friends, and welcome to another video in my kitchen. If you're new here, my name is Ash, and this video is going to be a little bit different to my last two videos. This week I focused on dinner meals that were low effort, they were simple, comforting, and cozy. I've been feeling very stressed lately and the mental fatigue has been very heavy. So stick around if you've been feeling the same way. I have some great weeknight dinners that you can try this week. The first one is this shredded chicken Korean soup. I found this while scrolling through my TikTok feed and it was advertised as a high protein, low calorie meal. But I saw it as a hearty and comforting chicken broth that you can eat with rice or with noodles. I decided to make some rice with this, and the chicken was extremely tender. The broth was very flavorful, and the way that you flavor this is with a few aromatics. So I added some garlic, onion, and ginger to a simmering pot of water with some chicken leg quarters. The soup is very tasty and it pairs perfectly with this dipping sauce. The dipping sauce is very simple. It's a mixture of soy sauce, rice vinegar, some honey, jalapeños, scallions. I'll have the entire recipe down in the description. It was incredibly delicious, and you'll see how I use this dipping sauce in another meal later on in the week for a chicken stir fry that was incredibly delicious. Now you'll see a pattern for all of these dinners. You'll see that the protein of choice is always going to be chicken, and that's because this week was really centered around affordable meals. Alright, it is dinner time, and for today I'm gonna make a cilantro lime chicken. I have all my ingredients here. I'm gonna make the marinade and coat the chicken real quick, and we'll grill it up here behind me, and we'll probably have that with some potatoes. This is a recipe that I tried while preparing postpartum freezer meals for my best friend who just had a baby. She mentioned that this was one of her and her husband's favorite meals out of all the ones that I made for them. And I can tell why it was a favorite because the flavor is very citrusy, it's herby, and the chicken is super tender. And these cooked up so quickly on the griddle, but they can easily be made in an air fryer or in the oven. Whatever cooking method that you choose, I'm sure that it'll come out delicious. And the marinade is made very simple. For the marinade, it's just a mix of cilantro, lime, honey, Worcestershire sauce, a bit of spices, and again I'll have all the recipes down in the description. But this is all blended up and it comes together so quickly, and you can even meal prep this ahead of time if you're not ready to cook it for that night. So it's a great meal prep option. You can eat it in a rice bowl, or I paired it with some roasted tomatoes, and it was a great Tuesday weeknight meal. I try to be as strategic as I can throughout the week, even though I am extremely tired and just have a ton of mental fog. But a way that I made my week easier is by saving up some of that shredded chicken from Monday night's dinner. At first, I was thinking of making these into tacos or into nachos. I couldn't decide, but on Wednesday night, I decided to make sheet pan nachos, which are super simple. And a way to elevate this just a little bit more is to make my own salsa. So I roasted a few Roma tomatoes, a jalapeno, a piece of onion, and some garlic. You let that roast for about 30 minutes in the air fryer or in the oven, and then you can use a food processor or a blender to pulse it to the consistency that you like. I might have blended mine a little bit more than I like, but it still came out very delicious. And you just season that with a little bit of salt and some fresh lime, and you have homemade roasted salsa. Now for the shredded chicken, you can use it as is and put it on top of your sheet pan nachos. But I wanted to season mine just a little bit because I wanted a little bit of that extra flavor. So I ended up seasoning with a few spices like salt, pepper, garlic powder, chili powder. I believe I used cumin as well, and a little bit of lemon juice for a pop of flavor. Really, the only prep that's needed here is to shred your own cheese. I love shredding my own cheese just because the cheese pull is better, it tastes better, and it doesn't have that ingredient that pre-shredded cheese has, and I just prefer using it. So to a large baking sheet, you're just going to layer your favorite tortilla chips, followed by your shredded cheese. And the shredded cheese that I'm using is mozzarella, Monterey Jack, and cheddar. Then add a generous amount of the chicken, the roasted salsa, and repeat the layer one more time. I believe I baked this at 400 for maybe 10 minutes tops. And just like that, dinner was ready. And I feel like this had tons of protein. It was very tasty. And we had enough servings to last us for leftovers the following day. My husband really enjoyed this meal and it was one of his favorites from the week. You also don't need to make this super fancy. I topped mine with some pickled onions that I already had in the fridge with some minced cilantro, but use what you have on hand. Even if you had maybe a can of olives, or if you just wanted to add anything extra that you like, add it on there, and it's a fantastic weeknight dinner. Now for Wednesday night, I mentioned earlier that I saved some of that dipping sauce from Monday night's dinner to use in today's stir fry. Just like the last meals, it's incredibly simple and extremely flavorful because of that sauce. And really, you can use up any vegetables that you have on hand. So I had a few multicolored peppers that I just sliced very thinly. And I had some scallions that were about to go bad. So I used the white parts in my stir fry and saved the green parts for garnish later. And if you don't have some of these ingredients, like for example, the fresh ginger, you can use powdered ginger and it still gives it that same flavor that I think made this meal very delicious, just with a few substitutions. And for this night, I decided to leave the chicken thighs specifically for this meal because chicken thighs tend to be a little bit fattier compared to chicken breast, and the leg quarters I think were perfect for soup. I generally wanted the chicken thighs to be cut into bite-sized pieces because they cook quicker, and I think it's just a better texture for the stir fry. You can cook the chicken however you like, so if you want to bake the chicken or if you want to air fry the chicken, whatever works best for you and your family, go ahead and do that. But since we're making a stir fry, this is a great one pot meal. And really, I'm not using any mixing bowls here. I'm seasoning my chicken on my cutting board, the same cutting board that I used to chop it into bite-sized pieces. And these are seared on both sides for about 2 to 3 minutes until they have a nice golden color. And these cook very quickly because of their size. I cook these in batches because I don't want to overcrowd my pan. If you do overcrowd your pan, then your chicken will begin to steam instead of sear. So once I had my batches done and cooked, I started sauteing the vegetables that I prepped early on, and that takes no more than 2 or 3 minutes. Now, if you have an Asian market near you, I recommend to buy these frozen udon noodles. They're perfect to have in your freezer and make stir fries like this. I also love their ramen too, and I always have both stacked in my freezer just for simple, easy meals like this one. There's no need to boil the noodles, just mix everything until well combined, add back in the chicken, and add our dipping sauce from earlier this week. You'll want to keep stirring until the sauce has become thickened and everything is beautifully combined and coated. And then to serve this, you just want to garnish with the green parts of the green onion that we saved from earlier. And just like that, you have a very simple weeknight dinner. I gave it to my husband to try, and he's a big fan of Asian style meals, so this one was definitely a top favorite meal of the week. Now this Friday night, I did make a dinner that involved a little bit more energy out of me, but I purposely left this dinner for the last day of the work week just because my sister was coming over for dinner and she loves when I make her a homemade meal. So I thought it would be a great treat to make a roasted chicken, and I paired this with homemade french fries, a side of rice, and a side cucumber and tomato salad. I started with prepping the chicken first because that's what takes the most time to cook, and to speed up the process, I removed the spine of the chicken. That way the chicken can cook more evenly and quicker. I season this very generously with a few spices. I'll have the full list of spices down in the description below. But to give you a general idea, I used tons of garlic powder, complete seasoning, oregano, chili powder. Generally, when I make a roasted chicken, I like to marinate it the night before or the morning of. And sometimes I even like to do a dry brine or a wet brine just so it can be nice and moist and delicious. But honestly, even though I had very little time to cook this chicken, it still came out extremely juicy and extremely flavorful. And part of that was because I baked it covered, and that just allowed the chicken to cook in its own juices. And closer to when the chicken was almost done, that's when I removed the aluminum foil, and that's when I used a turkey baster to baste all those chicken drippings onto the chicken. That just makes sure that the chicken stays juicy, but it develops a nice color on the skin. And while I'm waiting for the chicken to cook, I take the time to make the fries. The fries also take a little bit of time and patience, but I think it's worth it if you want that very crispy takeout fry. But you can also bake these in the oven, or you can air fry them if you don't want to fry them in oil. If you want to make fries at home, wash the potatoes and dry them very well, or you can peel the skin off and just make sure that you give it a good rinse before you pat it dry. And to get them into a fry shape, you first want to slice off a thin layer so you have an even and flat base. This is important because if you try to chop and the potato slides around, it could be very dangerous and you can potentially injure yourself. So once you have a flat base, you want to slice into 1/4 inch planks, then slice those planks into 1/4 inch strips. Now, once you have all your fry shapes, you soak them in an ice bath for about 25 minutes, and that just ensures that it removes any excess starch, and that's what makes the French fry very crispy when you go to fry it. And before transferring the fries into the hot oil, we do need to make sure that the fries are fully cooled because we don't want any water touching the oil. Now you'll see how when I first fry these and I take them out of the pot, they look pretty pale, but that's because they're flash fried first. And that just means that you're frying it once at a certain temperature before you fry it again at a higher temperature to achieve that level of crispiness that you're looking for. I toss them with some coarse kosher salt just to give them that salty kick that a good French fry needs. So while my first batch is frying, I take the time to make my cucumber and tomato salad. If you don't feel comfortable doing this while your French fries are frying, then do it at a later time. But I'm using up my time to multitask where I can and where I feel comfortable. And this salad is just very simple. It's chopped cucumber and tomatoes, and the dressing is a red wine honey vinaigrette. I thought that this combination was very refreshing and it paired very well with the French fries and baked chicken. Our chicken was done. It was roasted beautifully. I poured a little bit more of those juices right on top, and it was ready to serve. My sister was already there. Both her and my husband were waiting very patiently for the food, and once they saw it, they immediately wanted to dig in.
Who's hungry?
I served everyone a generous amount of rice, french fries, chicken, and the side salad. Everyone finished their meal full and satisfied, and that left me extremely happy because that's what I love doing. I love to feed my loved ones, and this meal was definitely one of my favorites from the week. So friends, thank you for joining me in this week's video. I'll have all the recipes down in the description below. If you like videos like this, then consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you next week in my kitchen.